Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! About 12 years ago, I worked in security for a high-end resort. It was a small group and the head of security was a retired police sergeant. He was actually pretty cool and had a really strong sense of right and wrong. We had a fridge in the back and I would buy things like juice for when I had a low sugar, type 1 diabetic, as snacks to keep my sugar from bottoming out since I walked 5 to 6 miles per shift. My juice disappeared. I replaced it and the same thing happened again. I got another, I wrote on it that I don't use cups and I have mouth herpes. I don't. It disappeared again. We all had an idea who it was but couldn't ever catch him. Until I walked in one day and saw the first shift guy making a meal out of my food. I asked him point blank what he was doing eating my food and he said, "That's what you get for being late." I checked the clock and I was 2 minutes late. He even took food out of my locker. I was snacking on my glucose tabs because they taste like candy. Somehow the head of the department found out what he said and called me in to ask about it. It seems this dude had been stealing food from the fridge since he started there, and while people weren't happy about it, they were willing to let it go since a lot of people brought food in and thought of it as community property. This didn't apply to me because they viewed my food as medically necessary, and this was the first time he went into someone's locker. My boss said this would be handled and dismissed me. When I came in for my next shift, all of this guy's stuff was gone, and his locker was empty. My mom also worked there at the time and I found out that because this guy served in Iraq, he felt like everyone owed him. He would constantly come in late to work, pawn his work off on other people. I was the only one who didn't contribute to the communal fridge. If you needed to type up an incident report, you had to wait for him to finish browsing the internet on the office computer. We had only one at the time. I ran into him about 6 months after he was let go while I was doing laundry, and right as I was approaching the big machine, I was doing mine and my then boyfriend's laundry, he jumped in front of me and took it. This guy might be the most entitled piece of crap I've ever encountered. ETA. I told my mom about this post and there was more that happened before I started. I normally wouldn't have added anything because it was already more than enough, but this latest information was straight what the hell. I guess he used to try to bring his enormous husky into the office with him, but the boss said he couldn't do that. Okay, the dog isn't in the office anymore. But less than a few hours later, the office received a report about a dog locked in a car. He left the dog in the car. What the actual hell? I have 2 dogs. One we rescued just last December and he was 12, and I won't even leave him outside in the sun too long even though he loves the sunbathe because he's my baby. When my boss pretty much asked him what the hell and said he can't do that and that it's cruel, the guy said he wanted his dog near him but was told he couldn't bring him to work. Again, what the hell? I'm a retired school teacher who's been living in my cozy house for decades. Life's been good, except for Karen, who moved in next door a few years ago. She's got that classic entitled attitude, you know, the one that makes her think she deserves everything she wants. One morning I was tending to my garden when Karen strutted over. "Hey there," she said, her tone fake sweet. "I've been thinking I'd love to buy your house and expand my backyard. How does that sound?" I chuckled, thinking she was joking. "Oh, Karen, you always have a way of cracking me up. My house is my home, and I'm not planning on selling it anytime soon." Well, let's just say Karen's smile faded faster than a snowflake in July. Her entitlement wouldn't let her accept no for an answer. "You're being unreasonable. I deserve that extra space more than you do. You're retired anyway, so what's the point of all this room?" I sighed, brushing off her ridiculous demands. Little did I know Karen was brewing up a storm of absurdity behind the scenes. A couple of weeks later, I started receiving notices from a city inspector about supposed violations and citations on my property. I scratched my head in confusion because I've always maintained my home well. One fine afternoon, my doorbell rang, and I opened it to find a woman dressed as a police officer. She flashed her badge and introduced herself as Officer Turner. She claimed she was investigating the violations reported by a concerned citizen. You guessed it, Karen. I showed her around confused and a bit annoyed. "Ma'am, I'm afraid you have some major violations here," she said with a stern voice. "You've got pushes that are an inch too tall, a mailbox in the wrong shade of blue, and don't even get me started on that garden gnome placement." I stared at her in disbelief. Garden gnome placement? Seriously? But what struck me as odd was her insistence on issuing citations right then and there, on the spot. It all seemed a bit off, and that's when my suspicions kicked in. I calmly told Officer Turner that I wanted a second opinion and asked her to wait while I called my daughter Lisa. Lisa's been a real cop for years, and she knows a thing or two about police protocol. Lisa arrived, and as soon as she saw Officer Turner, her eyes widened in surprise. She whispered to me, "Mom, that's not a real police officer. Her uniform is all wrong and her badge is definitely fake." Damn it, my instincts were right. This whole situation reeked of Karen's involvement. Lisa decided to play along though and asked Officer Turner to step outside for a discussion. Long story short, Lisa called in some real backup, and within minutes, Officer Turner was revealed to be nothing more than a hired imposter. She was promptly arrested for impersonating an officer, and she confessed that Karen was the one that hired her to scare me off. Now you'd think that would be the end of it, right? Oh no, not with Karen in the picture. She stormed over furious that her plan had backfired. "What did you do? I just wanted some extra space," she yelled. I looked at her, fed up with her antics. "Karen, you went too far this time. You're not just getting away with it." Lisa intervened. Having heard enough, she calmly told Karen, "Ma'am, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit a crime and hiring an imposter." You should have seen Karen's face. She was speechless as the real officers handcuffed her and the imposter she hired. In the end, Karen's ludicrous plan crumbled around her. As for me, I continued enjoying my retirement, my house, and my garden gnome wherever I darn well pleased. I, 24, got pregnant while I was taking a gap year traveling. I met an older guy, nothing gross. I was 19 and he was 23. We had fun and I was working in a bar to make money while I explored the city. When I got pregnant, he lost interest real quick. I understood, but I'm pro-choice, and I chose not to terminate. I went home and had my son. I also made sure to get child support. He could afford it. He did fight it though, and I had to prove paternity and everything. Through that, his parents found out. They are well off. They have met my son and they truly do seem to love him. They have provided gifts for his birthday and Christmas. They helped me with extra money so I could complete my university because I'm going into debt. They have taken us on vacation with them so they could spend time with him. They aren't my biggest fans, but we are cordial to each other. 3 months ago, my son's father passed away. He got drunk at his bachelor party, tripped on a sidewalk and hit his head. And that was all she wrote. My son and I attended the funeral. We spent a week in that city so his grandparents could see him, and they approached me with an offer. They had no other children or grandchildren. Their son was only 28, so he had lots of time to provide them legitimate kids. They did not say this, I'm just assuming. So they never thought about my son's name. They said that if I changed his surname to theirs legally, they would make him their primary heir. I think this is dumb. He is their only grandchild and they would deny him an inheritance because of his last name? I said I would consider it, to be polite, and have left it at that. I actually have a pretty good life as it is. My family has been very supportive, and because of the whole court thing, my son's father had to have life insurance with him as a beneficiary. Would it be nice for my kid to get a big sum of money? Yes. Do I want him to have the surname of a man who didn't want him, see him, or even love him? No. I have been talking to my family about it and a few of them think I'm being a jerk for giving up this kind of money for my son. It is generational wealth and I'm making the decision based on emotion. I think they are jerks for thinking money is the only thing that matters. I think I will tell my son's grandparents that they can talk to him about it when he's 16. He will be old enough to understand the implications, but young enough not to be tied professionally to his last name. My family situation is messy. I, 25 female, was engaged 4 years ago to my high school sweetheart. My fiancé cheated on me with my sister, 28, and we had never had a good relationship even as kids. So after I found out, I went coursed her spouse on them. She was so in love with my fiancé, but he dumped her within 2 weeks and was back trying to get me to forgive him. I didn't. My parents were initially on my side, but my sister had a nervous breakdown after she was dumped and was hospitalized. So they changed their tune to, "It's over now and you can't be mad forever." So I dumped them too. I went to grad school on the other side of the country. My grandfather was livid with the whole thing, disowned my sister and chewed out my parents. Sometimes it felt like he was the only one who was on my side and understood. I was able to get my job to let me work remotely and moved back to take care of him when he got sick last fall, and I was devastated when he passed a couple of months ago. I have been in limited contact with my parents since I came back, mostly because I didn't want to be an obstacle to my dad seeing my grandfather, but with the understanding that any discussion of my sister or what's happened would end that. It turns out that my grandfather left me virtually everything. He left enough for my father to cover a debt and some token stuff for a couple of other relatives. But he wrote letters for everyone and did a videotape with his attorney explaining what his intentions were. I knew that he had done well for himself, but he lived a pretty simple lifestyle, so I didn't realize how much money and assets he really had. I would give it all up to have my papa back, but even after taxes, it's set for life money. My parents are pretty mad about it. One of the reasons stated for cutting them out was how disappointed my grandfather was with how they had treated me growing up versus my sister, and over the fiancé debacle. There were other reasons, but that's what they were fixated on. The well is pretty airtight apparently, so my parents want me to do the right thing and share it equally between me, them, and my sister. Their argument is that I don't need it, I make more than both of them combined, and this would allow them to retire. My sister is not doing great and can't hold a job, so this would ensure she has something for when my parents pass. I don't want to. My grandfather's wishes were crystal clear, and also I kind of don't feel like doing more than the minimum for any of them. They have been telling me that I am being vindictive because of a mistake years ago. I can't deny there might be a little vindictiveness there. I don't want them to suffer necessarily, but I also don't feel like they deserve my help. When my partner and I decided to let my mom and her sister crash at our place, we had no idea the kind of wild ride we were in for. So there is me, a 40-year-old guy, and my partner, 36, just your average couple living our lives, and we were doing pretty well, enjoying our lives, and then a whole mother and debacle happened. We thought we were being nice, offering a temporary roof to my mom and her sister after they got kicked out of their previous place. Little did we know we were in for a real crap show. It all started innocently enough. They moved in and it was hugs and smiles all over. We figured, hey, family's important, right? We'll make this work. But boy, were we naive. One day I walked into our living room and it was like I stepped into a parallel universe. The decor was completely different, furniture rearranged, and our beloved Tom of Finland prints missing. Yeah, they just vanished into thin air. I was scratching my head, wondering if I'd entered a different house. I approached my partner, who looked as bewildered as I felt, and I asked her, "Honey, did you move the prints? What's up with a new furniture arrangement?" She shook her head, looking equally baffled. "Not me, babe. I thought you were trying a new look." We exchanged looks that said it all. Something fishy was going on. A couple of days later, we discovered the true extent of the invasion. Our kitchen knives, half of them, had been thrown out. According to my mom, we had too many. Seriously? And also, our prized sushi knives, the ones that could make a sushi chef jealous, had met their untimely fate in the trash. My heart ached a little, I'm not gonna lie. and there was a whole plant madness. My aunt, who claims to be a gardening expert, decided to turn our yard into her personal project. She had this peculiar idea that chopping everything down to the base would make it healthier. Yeah, right. I tried explaining to her that our plants were not her personal guinea pigs, but she just brushed me off. One evening, I came home to find my partner on the verge of tears. She gestured toward the backyard, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Our brand new magnolia tree, the one we'd carefully planted and nurtured, was gone. Not a trace of it remained except for a pathetic stump. My heart sank, and I felt a mixture of anger and frustration bubbling up inside me. I confronted my aunt. "Did you cut down our magnolia tree?" She looked unfazed, like she'd just confessed to borrowing a pencil.
"Oh, that? Yeah, I thought it was just a weed. Besides, it was in the wrong spot."
I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. It wasn't a weed. It was a carefully chosen tree, and it was our property. You can't just destroy things without asking. She shrugged, clearly uninterested in my perspective. And that's when I laid down the law. They will pay for a new magnolia tree, and if they destroyed anything else, they will be out on their entitled behinds. Let's just say my aunt wasn't thrilled about shelling out $120 for a new tree. My mom was sulking and my aunt was fuming, but I wasn't about to let them trample all over our boundaries. Fast forward to a few days later, as we walked through the front door, there it was, our brand new black tulip magnolia tree. It looked a little bit sad, still adjusting to its new home, but it did the job. Over the weeks that followed, we held our ground. Whenever something disappeared or got rearranged, we confronted my mom and aunt. Sometimes it was comical, like the time they tried to hide my partner's prized vintage vinyl collection because they didn't get the music. Yeah, right, as if they were curating a museum. We had our fair share of heated conversations, like that one evening when my mom insisted on turning our guest bedroom into a mediation retreat. I told her in no uncertain terms that we still had guests using it, my aunt and herself. My partner backed me up, and after some grumbling, they backed down. The turning point came when my aunt decided she had another gardening project, and she eyed my collection of potted herbs with a mischievous glint in her eye. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her that she had crossed the line one too many times. It was either respect our space or pack their bags. She huffed and puffed, but this time she knew I wasn't backing down. The silent treatment ensued, accompanied by sulking and eye rolls from my mom. I kept my promise though. I didn't let them mess with our home anymore. Gradually, the dynamic shifted. My mom and aunt started realizing that they were guests in our home, not rulers of it. They began to take care of our boundaries, and dare I say, we even had some peaceful moments together. Now as I look back on that crazy chapter, I can't help but smile. Our home survived the storm of entitlement, and we emerged stronger. We learned the importance of setting boundaries, standing up for what's important to us, and not letting anyone trample over our space. It's just, your home is your sanctuary, and no one should ever make you feel like a guest in your own space. At least, that's what I believe in.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.